Welcome to another episode of the Jersey Podcast. I'm your host, Darian Kelly, and today I have two very special guests. I have Jason Sears, Senior Director of Digital Product at Rightpoint, and Ben Johnson, who's Senior Vice President of Digital Product at Rightpoint. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Darren.
Yeah, glad to be here, Darren.
Absolutely. Just wanted to jump right in and just wanted to get an understanding of, first off, what is Rightpoint and what are some of the services that you provide to your clients?
Sure. Yeah. So, Rightpoint's a global experience company. We span all sides of digital experiences, everything from commerce, public-facing website development, employee experience work, mobile applications, connected devices, custom web experiences. And, specifically within digital product, we have over 15 years of experience partnering with brands to come up with the strategy and experience for these products. And we use technology, to realize the visions for our clients and make them possible. It definitely applies to the sports industry as well, and it spans everything from mobile apps to custom client portals.
And then also in addition, understanding that you all represent or are a presence within the sports industry from a digital product standpoint, are there any, I guess, client success stories that you all have to really show what differentiates Rightpoint from, other, digital product companies within the space?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start maybe at the beginning with our first sports tech example, and I think this is a good one and shows that we have the capability to really build amazing digital products. So the first sports digital product that we built was a mobile app for a company called Runkeeper, and this was a mobile app at the time that Jason Jacobs, the founder, wanted to build because he was tracking his runs on a literally like a piece of paper and using like string to like measure how far he had gone. And we were building technology, and the iPhone had just launched, and GPS was going to be on the iPhone. It was the first time that GPS was going to be there, and we built this mobile app that helped you track your runs, how far you went, and all of that. And it ended up being a really powerful and popular mobile app. It's used by millions of people all around the world, billions of calories counted, and a really great example of our success. And we've done a lot since then. Jason can talk about a few more recent examples.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one that comes to mind is a company called P3, stands for Peak Performance Project. So we began working with them in the fall of 2021, and they work with the NBA. They go through a series of motion capture tests for each athlete. So through this proprietary IP that they have, they can determine whether or not an athlete is at risk for injury or not. And so, prior to working with them, they had more of a challenge and opportunity, right, where they would currently, at the time, create PDFs. They would email it out to coaches, athletes, scouts, general managers, all different types of stakeholders. And if you think about, democratizing data, making it accessible, we ended up building a client-facing portal for all those different user types to view real-time data, compare it against other players, depending on your access, like if you're a coach, general manager, right? And just have a general interactive experience. One of the really interesting things about P3 is on the horizon, what's coming is that they're interested in using multi-access edge compute. And so being able to process all that video footage of athletes, all that analysis at the edge with real extreme low latency, which is very exciting, something we're hoping to partner with together on in the future. That's a great example of a client-facing portal. Ben mentioned, mobile application there with Runkeeper.
Yeah, and you mentioned the aspect of the client facing portal, and I know that there are other clients that you all work with. I know that Visual Edge, League Spot, as well as Envision Racing. One of the things that I find fascinating about the technology that is implemented within these companies is that they're solving a specific problem. Can you guys elaborate a little bit more on those three specific companies? I know that you just mentioned P3, but with Visual Edge and League Spot and Vision Racing, what are some of the, I guess, how are you guys leveraging, or how are they leveraging technology to solve problems within sports?
Yeah, great question. I mean, the way that we approach all of our work at Rightpoint is really through the lens of people, process, and technology. So we use technology ultimately to drive a solution and actually build product for our clients. But we really start with that people focus, right? So listening to our various stakeholders, understanding their goals, empathizing with them on their problems. What are the types of challenges that athletes are having? Like Runkeeper, for example, that Ben had talked about. Jason Jacobs used to take pins and put it on the map and measure how long his distance was and the routes that he took, right? Similar to scouts, coaches, general managers, and others. What are the goals that they're trying to solve? Just like what Jason Jacobs had. What was the problem he was trying to solve? And try to figure out what they're measured on. And then we apply a process to it, right? How can we use technology to make them and their organizations run better and more efficiently? So coming up with ideas to determine how technology can realize that client vision I talked about. Does a mobile application make more sense? Is it a web experience? Both. And then ultimately using technology, like I said, to make it happen. So modernizing your tech stack is a big piece of that. Maybe starting from scratch if you don't really have a tech ecosystem in place. And I think the key thing there, within technology, is approaching all of our new solutions with a cloud native mindset. So making sure that what we're architecting has the ability to scale horizontally as like a growing user base. It continues to evolve.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, I think one of the things you brought up is, the people, how the technology is impacting your, the people that are consuming your product or interacting with your product specifically. I think as sports kind of evolve, right, where, there are two different aspects I want to touch on is, in the context of new leagues, right? Cycling, right? There's a new cycling league that is just launched and it's gaining a lot of attention. I mean, I know that Ben, you work heavily, on the Pelotonia side of things, and just wanted to understand, what that relationship, is, and talk a little bit about, when you talk about making sure the technology impacts the people, when you talk about the expansion of leagues, how does technology being incorporated when you talk of like Pelotonia and, how cycling is evolving?
Yeah. So two interesting examples when you think about how sports is growing and getting more people involved. Now I'll start with cycling and then mention League Spot. So the new National Cycling League, actually a former client of ours is one of the main people behind it. I think it's just a representation of the growing interest in the sport. And one example of that, which again, these sorts of sports opportunities can benefit us in so many different ways, is this organization that we work with called Pelotonia. They are a charitable organization. They're committed to ending cancer. And they have created a annual bike ride in Columbus, Ohio each year. It's an annual ride, between 5,000 and 10,000 riders, ride across the countryside. It's really fun. I've done it several years, but what we actually built for them was a way for anybody to be a part of this mission anywhere in the world. So you can run or ride your bike or walk or climb a mountain. Any sort of sports activity sort of gets you behind this mission and helps raise money for cancer research. So it's I think just an example of how the growing interest in sports can really give back in really interesting ways. The other example to bring up is our work with League Spot. And this is an organization, Jason can talk about this more, which is building tools for YMCA after school programs to get kids involved in e-gaming. So you think about the explosion of interest and people that are getting involved in e-gaming. What's a better way to direct some of those kids who are getting exposed to this and interested in how they could be a part of a team and learning how to be a part of a team, than building tools and technology for organizations like the YMCA to be able to host games and host tournaments and things like that. So I think really two great examples of just the increase in interest in sports and the resulting technologies that can really help expand it to lots of different people.
Yeah, I mean, within League Spot, it's interesting. Obviously, we're applying digital experiences now to virtual sports, and League Spot as a brand, they've created this. It's a white label platform, so a SaaS platform enables all their organizations, to do everything from organizing esports communities, leagues, tournaments. They, any of their clients can, customize the portal with their own logo, branding. They have a lot of great features in there, like supporting live chat, being the ability to organize these competitions, and other features, all in support of building communities around esports. So they're partnering with a lot of colleges, a lot of other organizations. The CEO, Andrew Barnett, had told me that over 200 colleges now award scholarships to students who excel in the esports, which is very exciting to see. And Ben had mentioned the YMCA. So you think about after school programs, right? Now giving kids an avenue to play esports together, after school, which is very exciting also.
Yeah, and I think that that's an interesting point about how gaming and the esports landscape has evolved. I had a guest on the show a while back, a guy by the name of Danny Martin, who owns a company called Exposure out of Dallas, in which he's creating essentially an esports ecosystem, right? And I think that's kind of similar to when you mentioned the YMCA and giving back and providing youth with opportunities to be involved in esports, not just the actual gaming piece, but also the ecosystem. And what I mean by that is creating content around esports, understanding the business behind it, because it is a business at the end of the day. And I think that is ultimately, when I, think back to, with you, Jason, as far as how you mentioned, and, you had a Sports Business Journal article in which you were talking about leveraging customer base and leveraging real-time analytics. I think that piece, when you think of the data and who is involved in the esports ecosystem and how data is leveraged to expand it and grow it, from a talent perspective, I think that's something to also keep an eye and key on as well.
Definitely, definitely, and even related to that article, I know I had mentioned in there that back in August, Tiger Woods and Roy McIlroy, they announced their partnership to create a venture that's going to, what they're saying is building progressive approaches to the sports industry, which is tied to what we just talked about, taking traditional sports and starting to infuse technology within it and moving it even in some ways into a more virtual environment. So just a few weeks ago, they announced that they were partnering with, I think it's Palm Beach State College, and they're going to create a venue for what they're calling the TGL, which is a tech-infused golf league. So it's in partnership with the PGA, and I think they're going to be kicking it off in 2024. So it's my understanding it's going to be partially virtual, and it's also going to have a live short game as well in a physical venue. So when you think about enabling a tech-enabled fan experience and in a tech-infused venue, it's very exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to apply technology and build these experiences for their fans.
And then I think also, in addition, as the year has changed, we've seen a lot of different nuances to the digital product space within sports technology. Are there any specifically trends that you all foresee shaping the digital product landscape as we shift into the new year? Is there anything that the listeners or viewers should keep an eye out on?
Yeah, I mean, I think off the top of my head, and Ben, you can chime in here as well. I think there's a few that come to mind. So definitely what I mentioned earlier, the edge compute, multi-access edge compute is going to revolutionize, I think, the sports industry. It's already starting to happen now in terms of minimizing latency for real-time data and analytics. I think that's a key trend that's going to start to happen more. More broadly, outside of across just sports, it's just modernizing tech stacks. Even since the mid 2010s, the technologies that we would use to build either native applications or custom web portals in 2015 and 2016 has changed drastically in the last, let's call it 6-7 years. We're starting, like we talked about with League Spot, starting to bridge the virtual and physical world, right? Bringing engaging fan experiences to the individual, just like what Tomorrow's Sports is striving to do. And I think if I had to pick one more, I would say it'd be the just making sure that from an architecture perspective, you have the ability to scale so that you're approaching, again, solutions with a cloud native mindset, I think is key. So the way you approach architecture, the way that you ensure that what you're building is stateless, taking advantage of cloud services, everything there.
Yeah, I mean, something also that I have noticed is that there is this explosion of data that is happening in our world as consumers, but also happening in the world of sports. And I was just on the phone with a company that outfits pro teams. In fact, they had most of the teams competing in the World Cup were using this hardware. And the amount of data that they're getting is so challenging, so great in some ways and so challenging in other ways, specifically because driving the insights from that data is now the challenge, right? And so you may have all of the data in the world. What do you do with it? How do you act on it? And how do you make sure that data is in the same place where you can, gain those insights? I think that's a lot of what, as digital products come online more, as they start to mature, organizations are going to start to realize and recognize the value of insights, not just collection of data.
Yeah, and I think that you guys touch on two big topics or trends. I think that what you mentioned data, and my mind automatically goes to how when you watch games such as I was just watching Monday night, or excuse me, Sunday night football, and a lot of the insights or the data that is powered by Amazon. Or if you turn on any game nowadays, every all aspects of data is being powered by some specific software company. And then what you mentioned, Jason, as far as the edge computing, I see a lot of that being implemented by companies that are in the the sports betting realm when it comes to making sure games and things are updated with less latency to improve certain outcomes. So I think that from the data side of things, people are understanding that games are now pieces of data, and sporting events are just more than events now. There's so much data that you can take from that. And then on the other side, when we talk about edge computing and cloud native, we're seeing a lot of fan engagement companies, whether it's sports betting, whether it's companies revolving around the fan experience. They're leveraging the edge computing and lower latency side of things as well. So I think that both of those things are key.
Yeah, I mean, one of the DraftKings is a client of ours, and we help them build the flash draft component of their mobile app, and that was a really challenging implementation because you're making micro bets throughout the game, and so that like real-time data feed and constant connectivity is really important. I mean, it seems not super analogous, but I think often about the work that we did on a live auction platform where people are like bidding all around the world, and like, hey, second really matters when it comes to securing that item. And we had to do the same sort of like heartbeat connection, making sure that everything's flowing, all the data's in the right place. And so, yeah, I think the fan piece is really starting to drive, more consumption of data, more need for it, and fans they want to feel like they're there, and even if they are there, they want to have all the stats to help them experience the game. I mean, you're seeing so many stadiums get outfitted with 5G, and the reason for that isn't that like people are texting a lot during a game. It's because they have the game up on their phone because they want to see the live replay, or the other angle that maybe the networks have that they don't have in stadium, which is kind of I mean, it's nuts to think about.
Yeah, and I think also too, just kind of shifting more so, understanding you all's careers, and kind of as you've all grown and risen through the digital product space, were there I guess any challenges, because I know that people may view this or listen to this and see you all as on the SVP and director level. What are some I guess things that have helped from either a networking standpoint or just a habit standpoint that have allowed for the both of you to essentially get to where you are today?
Sure. I'll start. I mean, from my perspective, in terms of networking, I think my biggest advice there, starting off in your career, is just trying to go to as many events as possible and meet as many people from varying backgrounds as you can, right? And so constantly networking. And then also in terms of your work product and the way that the kind of impact that you're providing to your company, having a bias towards action. So trying something new, not overthinking things, doing some research, but then giving things a shot, and not being afraid to fail, I think is a key piece of how I moved up in my career. Problem solving, getting things done, trying things out, and then making things happen that way.
Yeah, I mean, think that one rule of thumb that I have, and anytime I'm work or talking to early stage kids who are coming out of college, and I work with a lot that are coming out of my alma mater. But for me, it's all about putting yourself in the shoes of the person that you're talking to. How can you help? How can you help them in some way? Connect with them in some way that you might not have before. And when you have that conversation and that connection, I think it's always important to ask for someone else that they would introduce you to, so that you can kind of keep that networking going. And I'm really honestly, that's how I got this job. It was I had someone I knew, and instead of just saying, "Hey, great conversation," I said, "Hey, is there somebody that you could introduce me to that would be a good fit for me to talk to?" And they introduced me to our CEO, and that's how this job came about. So when I think when people are out job hunting and thinking about their careers, that's a really important part. Is like, it's not it's a network effect, right? You gotta keep talking to people, and it's honestly it's a numbers game to some extent. The more people that you talk to, the more opportunities you're gonna see. So it can be challenging and a bit intimidating for someone who maybe isn't as used to that. But I think as much as you can broaden your your potential pool of people, and doing that through asking for people to refer you to other people, the better.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that when it comes to networking, it's all about, the names, playing the name game, but it's also about how you nurture those relationships over time. Like a lot of my mentors that say, always check in with people. It's not necessarily about the initial connection, but also, being able to, nurture those relationships over time, and seeing, how you can add value to what people are building, irrespective of industry or what they're a part of. So I think that those are great tips as well. So as we shift towards the conclusion of the show, I like to call this the wearing this jersey portion of the show, in which you have to answer questions with the first thing that comes to your mind. Small questions around the world of sports, and just want to get your opinion on these things. So just gonna jump right in. So wearing the jersey. So given that with this recording tonight is the night of the college football national championship, and I wanted to get both of you to see who are your picks to win the national championship this evening.
Honestly, that's that's a tough question. I'm conflicted because I grew up watching Ole Miss football, and the Rebels are sorely underrepresented. I feel in tonight's competition, but I don't know. I'd probably go for the Bulldogs, just given the proximity to to them. But yeah, I don't know if I'm rooting for either team, to be totally honest.
Yeah, for my perspective, I grew up in Dallas, so I'm gonna have to go TCU all the way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Favorite sports memory of all time?
Oh, for me, I would have to say it's so I went to the Eagles Vikings NFC Championship in Philadelphia in 2017. So that was great. I got to attend that in person, and looking forward to the divisional playoffs here in about 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
On the continuing the Ole Miss theme, I got to see Eli Manning snap his first snap as a college QB, and that was a really fun moment with my dad in the stadium at Vaught Hemingway, and yeah, it was a great memory.
If you could work with anyone in sports, who would you all want to work with?
From my perspective, I would say definitely Tiger Woods, Roy McIlroy. I mean, I'd love to chance at their business with Tomorrow Sports. I think that'd be great.
Well said. Yeah.
Favorite jersey of all time?
For me, I have a Brian Westbrook, old school. So I think that's probably my favorite.
This one's a little sentimental for me. So I'm in Boston. When the marathon bombing happened, I was actually at a work. We had like a work party that day because we get the day off, and so I was with a bunch of my colleagues here at Rightpoint, and the jersey that the Red Sox wore. I don't remember when it was. It was probably like I guess it was probably like the week after, just said Boston on it. It was just a great tribute to the victims of the bombing, and the city was so thrown into disarray that it was like the first big sporting event for the city to come back together. That was a really nice moment.
Absolutely. And then my last question is, who should I have on the show as a guest next?
From my perspective, I would say Peak Performance Project, like I mentioned earlier, there's a gentleman there named Eric Liedersdorf. He's obsessed with studying the science behind athleticism. He would be great. As well as Andrew Barnett. He's the CEO of Elite Spot. I think either of those would be wonderful.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for making the time today. I'm very very glad that we were able to have this conversation. I know that a lot of people will be able to take a lot from this conversation from a digital product and sports technology perspective. So I want to thank both of you all for your time. And where can the listeners and viewers kind of stay up to date on what's taking place with Rightpoint, and be able to follow you all and what's taking place?
Yeah, you can follow us on rightpoint.com, rightpoint.com/digital product to learn more about the experiences and what we're crafting within our digital product space, as well as all of our social channels. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you all again, and hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Darren.
All right.
Thanks, Darren.